Welcome to blackfilm.com Rewind with Ellen. I'm your host, Ellen Wanjero, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ro Carter. Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
I am amazing.
You know what I want to know, right?
I don't know. What you want to know?
I got questions. You just celebrated a birthday.
Yes, I did. Thank
I
you.
want to know what sort of mischief and shenanigans you got into leading up to your birthday and on the actual day, if any. You can't talk about it?
No, I will tell you the good the wholesome side.
Okay.
It's
a wholesome show.
Yes, it's definitely wholesome side. So I definitely spent some time with some family.
Okay.
So my little cousins caught up with one of my roommates from college, and then caught up with one of my boys from LA. Okay. which I had to drag home in the morning, which was not fun. Yes.
Too much turn up. Okay.
Yeah, he turned it up for me. He turned it up for me.
Good friend.
But the one thing I learned as I get older, getting wasted on your birthday is not fun. So I did not do that. Okay. Monday, my birthday was on a Monday the 19th. I just went to work and just relaxed and gave everybody some birthday love.
Okay.
On Instagram. And that was it. So I'm alive. I'm good. I'm healthy. Good. We'll see what happens next month.
I can't wait to hear the R-rated version after we're done with our lives. So today we're doing something a little different. We're solely focusing on Lovecraft Country episode 10, the final episode. But before we jump into that, I wanted to give, or rather highlight, two really incredible interviews I had earlier this week, but last week, with two Black female filmmakers and producers. So I just kind of want to promote the two. One is a short film, one is a documentary film. The first one is by filmmaker Winter Dunn, and her short film is called Junebug. It was really good, and it like introduces a 28-year-old Junie, who's a writer struggling with writer's block, to fully articulate who her dad was. It's a 17-minute short. Super good. To check it out, to see where you can watch it, go to her IG page, Junebug Film. The second interview I had was with a Student Academy Award winner, Allison Waite. For her class, she made a documentary film based on a true story. It's called The Dope Years, the story of Latasha Harlins. Now, not a lot of people might not remember this because it came out in 1992, right before the LA riots. And so this documentary film is about that 1991 tragedy, tragic death of Latasha Harlins. She was a teenager. She was in a grocery store, and the Korean owner behind, you remember that story, shot her.
Yeah. Oh my
really
God.
For no reason, because she thought she was stealing, but she wasn't stealing. And this woman shot this 13 or 14-year-old girl as she was walking away, and she died like on sight. And that headline was kind of buried under the LA riots and the Rodney King situation. So this documentary, it's super special, and it's told through the eyes of Latasha's closest friends and family. So it's a little different. It just kind of sheds light on the person she was and the effect her death had on her friends and her family. So it's really good. So to check that out, go to IG, The Dope Years. It's both films are definitely worth watching. Again, female filmmakers, producers doing their thing. And check out the interviews on blackfilm.com. Just go to blackfilm.com, type in Allison or Junebug, and they'll both come up. Okay, so moving on to the piece de resistance. So I didn't know what to expect in this series finale. The moment I'd been dreading, yet anxiously anticipating, arrived, which was Tick's death. Like, I didn't really think he was going to die. So I'm not quite sure how to feel about that. Although I knew that it was inevitable, I didn't think it was actually going to happen. So I'm a little taken aback by that. But knowing that the type of man that Tick was, that this character was, there was no way he was going to give Christina this book of names and go against his ancestors' plans, right? So I get that, but rarely do we see a hero die. Like, were you expecting the death? Like, did you know in your heart of hearts he was going to die?
Well, oh my God, there's so many deaths and non-deaths in this. So, but ever since his uncle died, in the first or second episode, I was like, oh my God, such a great character. So I wasn't shocked in a way because I was like, you've already done that to me once. So now I'm just expecting anybody to go after that, season 2. I'm sorry, episode 2. So at that point, everything. But yeah, I mean, how do you build a family if you don't have a father? But maybe that's a deeper conversation, right?
Yeah.
Black women again having to build a family without the father figure being there. So it was deep. It was sad, but I mean they killed it. They knocked it out of the box. I was nervous last episode. I was like, yeah. Well, I told you, right? It's like you're building me up. You're building me up. You're building me up. I'm like, where are we going with this? And then we talked earlier, in the season that there's going to be a season 2. But I was like, wait, are they going to end it as if there could be a season 2 or not? So that's the only thing I was worried about. But they did I think they did a great job.
Yeah, I was never worried about being disappointed. I was just worried how if there would be a season 2, and that would all be predicated on how this episode ended. But with this whole series just being about magic, is Tick Willie dead? There might be a season 2. He might come back. And then the second person who died in this episode that just broke my heart was Ruby. I was not expecting that either. I'm glad that they didn't show that on screen. I don't think my little poor heart could have taken it. But the fact that Christina perpetrated a whole fraud as Ruby the entire time, that just kind of blew me away. And especially the scene in the car when they were driving to Artem and singing. I mean, at that point, I didn't know that Ruby was dead, right? We really didn't know that until they got to where they were going. And I thought that was such a special moment in the car as they were singing. But you also knew that something obviously ominous was going to happen, and some people would not come back that were in that car. And so the fact that I found out that Ruby died and that was Christina singing along with everybody else, I was like, really, Christina? And so Christina's character just has kind of fascinated me this entire time, because she's been one of those villains that you feel like she is not really a villain, like she might be down for the cause, but then she really is one of those villains that you got to watch out for. Like, she's been about self the entire series, but leading us to believe that she cares. And so we really kind of got to see that come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, right? Because I was very sketchy, her energy, the way, she has one agenda, right?
Yeah.
But her and Ruby built a bond. I really felt that she cared for Ruby. So it really just messed with me a little bit in terms of, is Christina being real right now or is she not being real? But if I look at the facts, I go back everything, she's always been honest and straight up. And she gave Tick a way out, right? She said, hey, man, let's make a deal. Give me the pages, give me the book, whatever you need to do. Let's compromise here, and I'll find another way. I'll try to work with you. So I can only go by what someone's, shown me in the past.
Yeah.
But then as soon as, she took the spell off Letty, and then, killing Ruby. But I don't think she would have killed Ruby if she felt Ruby didn't backstab her. What do you think about that?
It could be a combination of that, but I think she needed to pose as Ruby to accomplish her mission. And that was her only way to do it without no one knowing what her plan was. So Ruby was that sacrifice. Ruby had to go for Christina to fulfill her agenda, especially, fast forward in the episode, her and Letty get into this fight, and she still looks like Ruby, and she pushes Letty out a window. So there's no way any of those things could have happened. Like, Christina would have been on the inside without doing that, I think.
But I think only because Titus showed up that happened. Because you remember the scene,
right.
They resurrect Titus, and then Titus like, boom, I'm out. He goes, and then the car accident, and then she flies through the window.
Right.
And I was like, wow, okay, so now she's like, okay, I got to find them, see what's going on. So again, she's playing chess, but then they had an opportunity. But I think if Titus doesn't show up in front of her, maybe she doesn't have to kill Ruby, and it doesn't work the way it does.
Huh. Okay. And it's nice to know that Ruby died helping her sister. They'd been so at odds at each other's necks the entire series that, you know, I didn't know if Ruby would ever come to Letty's aid or they would ever come to some understanding and be there for each other. So her death wasn't in vain, you know, and it kind of sucks that they never really got to kind of make amends with each other, right? Like Ruby died without never really saying what she needed to say to her sister. Like that's the only relationship I think in this entire series that never really got resolved. I feel like every other relationship kind of has, or it started to get resolved, or it became resolved. Like this particular episode 10, it was all about resolve for some people. There was a lot of tension. What do you think?
I think there was resolve because they did say she called her out. She goes, "You use me for you always call me when you need something," and so that was it. Wasn't it resolved in terms of the resolution wasn't like, oh, we had dinner later and we hugged and we made up, but the conversation was there.
That's a conversation.
So I thought both feelings were there out there. Like, no, I don't always do that. I don't mean to do that, but this is what I'm going through. I always feel you only need me when you only call me when you need something. So Ruby said what she felt.
She did.
And it was over to Letty to be like, oh, that's not the case this way. Or I think her silence was actually her kind of taking it in and being like, you know what, you're right. And then let me give you your space. I'm going to do my space. But then Ruby, did the next step, but that wasn't really Ruby. So we don't know if Ruby would have, yeah. So we don't, and that way, yes, you are correct.
Yeah, so because do you remember the scene when they were at their mother's gravesite, and like you just said, Ruby says to Letty, you're only my sister when you need something, and then she walks off, and then Letty says, I think she says, you don't know everything, and then we don't see what happens after that. The next time we see Ruby, if memory serves me right, is when she comes with the potion and they're on their way to Arden, right?
Yeah. So and then technically that was the resolve, but it wasn't really.
Right. That really wasn't Ruby. Yeah. So who knows? Again, with all this magic and wizardry, Ruby might not really be dead. Ruby might.
That's how I was praying. Because you mentioned earlier in the episode before that Ruby. I wish that character had more, right?
Yes.
And so for her to go out like that, unless you count the fight as technically her character. Having more, but it's not really her, right? So that was weird, and that's how she went out. But I was like, man. I was like, it would be nice to see Ruby. Maybe her getting killed would have been a nice way. I don't know, but it just.
And I thought about that. I thought about the backlash that the show got for making Ruby's entire storyline, with this white woman, but she served the purpose, right? Without Ruby, I don't know that Christina would have been able to accomplish what she needed to accomplish, having her take the stone into Sheriff Lancaster's office, and whatever else Ruby did for Christina. But I feel like that love or that relationship was real, and both can exist. It can be real, but then you can be betrayed. Like those two things can exist together.
But the kiss, though, they sealed it with the kiss, right? And both of them weren't they were themselves.
Women.
So I was like, wow, yeah, and two women, black woman, white woman, coming from two different backgrounds, and then I was like, wow, and that was just a moment I think for everybody, right? Like, okay, we're gonna let this happen now, or make this happen, and then that's why I really feel the backstabbing is what hurt Christina. I think she was honest so far in finding a way because of the kiss. If the kiss doesn't go down. And also, you forget when the car accident, she flies out. The first thing she does, she checks on Ruby to see if she's okay.
Right.
And so that indicated to me, like, wow, that's feeling, right? Versus like, oh, that's Titus. How are you? You know, if you're really concerned about living forever and all that stuff, then you run to Titus first, right?
Mm.
But I'm just saying, she ran to Ruby's side and said, "Hey, are you okay?" You know, I'm just with the person you want to fall in love with. Would you rather than run and see the person checking you first? I'm just honest.
No, I get it. That's a valid point. That's a valid point. Okay. Yeah, so a lot of things come together in this final episode. It's sort of like this culmination of everything we've been watching in episode 1 through 9. And I lost you there for a second. You're back. Okay. So one of the most special moments for me in this episode was the moment Tick had with Dora, and the fact that Dora came back. Like, we got to see Dora. I thought that was such a dope move, because that allowed us, and also it allowed Tick to kind of show his vulnerable side, which is something I feel like he struggled with the entire series. And who better to be vulnerable with than your mother, right? And again, to see them kind of have that moment was just everything. How did you feel about that as a man, as a Black man, seeing seeing your another Black man in that sort of?
You might make me cry right now. Seriously,
hey,
I hate to say this. No, not hate to say this, but my mom got diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I remember when I was now it's been over a decade now, and still fighting. I have to work with the trainer, doing all this stuff, but I never forget. She hugged me, and she said, "I just want to stop shaking." Oh. And that messed me up. It's messed me up right now. But that was a real moment that you have with your mom, and I felt that. I saw that. I was like, wow. I was like, whoo. Now you gotta see. Okay. Woo. Give me a second.
All right. No, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for men, and particularly Black men, to be able to show emotion or be unafraid to show emotion, even if that's tears, whatever it is. I think that's so important, because it doesn't signify anything other than you're a human being who feels things, and it's your right.
We're not allowed to feel. Well, in society, right? We're not allowed to feel. We have to be these men. We have to be strong at all times, and so that vulnerability is huge. And just shout out to, once again, Black women holding this down. No, seriously. I mean, they just everyone from just your ancestors going through this, and then now your future wife, your mother, all these Black women that are just coming together, your grandmother just like sacrificing. Would we do that today for our kids? The house is burning. I'm gonna stay. Oh no, I'm good. I'm gonna stay right here because I want you to make it. I don't know. But that's what they were willing to do for their kin back then. And so, oh man, I think this should be, history. This should be Black history, right? Through film, in terms of like every student should have to watch this. The way that you're learning through magic and all this, but you're learning history. There's so much history. I've learned more through these 10 episodes than I did, and I took Black history in college. I only took one semester of it, but I took it in college, and they just skimmed over the basic stuff, that we all should know, which is 3 people, right? Everything else, like, well, you're not gonna worry about them. That's fine.
That's crazy.
So it's just, it's a beautiful piece. I want to say it's a piece of art. I want to call this whole entire series a piece of art, because it hits on so many levels. And I had white friends that reached out to me like, it's so crazy, all this stuff that's happened in this show. And I'm like, mine's the magic and the monsters. This is like really, this is what happened.
This is life.
This is life.
Like, what was so crazy that's happening? The magic or the things?
Well, that's the thing, right? And so just quick one thing, and then we'll go on the next thing. But we had to deal with race massacre, slavery, Jim Crow, police brutality, housing discrimination, judicial injustice. Like, it's so many levels, and to see the way they just sprinkled it out through every show, and then actually bring it back in full circle, I think it's a bigger conversation, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, all they missed was education and voter rights.
Right.
But they were like, no, we're going to say they got election in 2 weeks. Just save it for that. But it's beautifully done. It's I don't know, man. I honestly ask myself every time I watch an episode, could me myself today as a black man, would I have the withal to like just like, okay, let's make through another day. It's what I gotta do, provide my family, yes sir, no sir, and kind of do that. Or what, because I am very polite and I am mindful of my surroundings.
Yeah.
But back then it's a different polite. It's a different being mindful. You have no choice or you will die.
Literally. Right,
you know? So I mean, it strikes a lot of chords, and I wish, honestly, they should make this part of Black Studies. Honestly, for
there should be a course.
High school, forget college, right? Get them young.
Start them young.
Yeah. Start them young, and just really have these conversations, because it's great with the magic and stuff, but you can really have a conversation about this on so many levels, and then you can go up and have some fun over here with the magic stuff and the monsters, but then you can really have some deep that's embedded in the roots conversation about what are we doing as a society, what are we doing as people, what are we doing?
And
I'm done.
Yeah, no, I thank you for sharing all of that, because I echo your sentiments, and I'm sure a lot of people do. That's why my hat goes out to Misha Green. Like, what in the world? Like, what planet is she from? My God. And I hope we can have her on this show at one point, just to like talk to her and just let her know what this show has meant to us, and just a whole lot of different things. But all right, just kind of pivoting back to that Dora scene, because just as you were affected, I swear, bro, I too was affected, because when you think about how much we need, even as adults, but more so as kids, how much we need our mother's reassurance, right? And we never get it, especially little Black boys, right? Because like you said, they're taught not to weep or to ask or to feel, right? So for Tick to get that moment with his mother and then utter the words, "I don't want to die." My God, if there's ever any words that, so someone struggles to say, and then when you say it, it's to your mother, that broke my heart, because he knew at that moment that it was going to be a wrap for him. And, I think we as the audience needed that moment as much as Tick did, because that just kind of explained a whole lot about who he's been, with the anger and the fear and the doubt and the uncertainty. All that plays a role in your relationship with your mama and your daddy, right? Everything goes back to the parents. I swear. I think that's why I'm so afraid to be a parent. Just because I don't want to damage my kid. But that's a different episode.
All right.
But I do like what Doris said to Tick. She said, you took on Montrose's fierce heart and George's integrity, and I think the light bulb went on in Tick's mind. I guess he started to understand, like, oh wow, right, I am those things. You know what I'm saying? I've been fighting my father for so long, but I do have some of his, for lack of a better word, chutzpah, and that's helped me a great deal. And so has George's. Actually, George is the real father, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was an entanglement.
Well, it was a legitimate entanglement.
You know about that? They were doing entanglements back in the day.
Yeah.
Jim Crow ain't got nothing on
Entanglement started BC, before Christ, I think.
Before COVID, yes. Before COVID.
So another thing that blew my mind was Jihad. So you and I have been kind of talking this entire series, like, yo, is Jihad gonna like serve a purpose beyond being like Tick's lover and going through her own thing with the 9 tails? Like, how is she gonna kind of resurface? And I'm so glad that she did, and I'm glad that the capacity she did it in, because she kind of saved the day at the end. And I'm glad that her and Tick got to have that conversation. He apologized for being super rude 2 episodes before, when he was like, yo, what we had was never real. I hate when dudes do that. What we had was real. Don't front. So I'm glad that Tick came around. What did you think?
All right.
I know. I'm in my feelings.
All right. For the record, don't put her in her feelings, all right?
No, don't do it.
Not today.
Not today.
Not ever.
Yeah. So what'd you think about Jiha's resurrection?
So that's tough, right? If I'm Jiha, I'm like, go F yourself, you know? I'm in your house. You got this lady pregnant here. Yeah. I just traveled how many miles to come see you during Jim Crow? I'm Asian. You know,
might as well be black, right?
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, come on. I don't know how much that cost back then. Anyway, but then she's still hanging out. Oh, she was gangster with the one dude. He was like, "Oh, you want to sleep with me? Are you willing to die?"
Yeah. I am using that. I can't use that on somebody. I feel like no questions asked after I say, "Do you want to die?" Like it's beautiful.
And that's the reason why. All right.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Now you know my story.
All right. I guess Tick had to resolve that. But shout out once again, the women in this show. So we'll talk about a little bit more at the end because there really isn't. There's only women left, really, besides Montrose. There's only women left in the show.
Right.
So I was like, oh, what are we gonna do here? If there was to be a season 2, but to go back to that scene, Atticus. I think we sometimes as men don't realize what we have until it's gone, but then also we're in another stage in our life. And so what I've done, I will say this personally, and that's what I felt he was doing. When I've matured to another level in my life, we still have these levels of maturity that we're still, figuring things out, whether it be financially, love, building a family, whatever it is we want to do, the goals that we have for our lives, each step we take, we have to have that real conversation with each other about what's going on. So I always think about, oh my God, now that I've understood that, I need to apologize. So not saying I've ever done somebody wrong so crazy, but enough to be like, hey, you know what? I was wrong. I should have done better when you gave me that opportunity in that relationship. And so that's great. And I've had people apologize to me, and I'm like, oh, well, thank you. That felt great. But I think mentally that helps you kind of move on in life when you understand, oh, I am not the one at fault, or I was the one at fault. Mm-hmm. And so when you process that and understand that, then you can actually move on to the next person versus it being another, besides it being a victim versus it being another opportunity. And I think once we kind of process that, then we can really make some huge steps in relationships. And that's the hardest part.
Yeah. And I think Tick had to get there. He spent 9 episodes growing into himself to get to several places, right? To have that conversation with Jiha, to finally understand what Hannah meant from episode 1 when she said, you hold the key, or your blood will save us. Like there's no way, and which is actually interesting that Hannah, the first time she spoke was in this episode, right? We've just kind of seen her, right? So in my mind, I'm like, there's no way she could have spoken and said those words to Tick in episode 1, because Tick would have been like, what, WTF, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Tick had to matriculate into this man who understands, who doesn't have doubts, who doesn't have fears, to get to a point where he can accept that and then make the ultimate sacrifice. But back to Jiha real quick. I love that Tick said to her that we're family, right? In the podcast, they spoke about trauma bonding, right? And how, going through something traumatic with someone, kind of whether you want to or not, it bonds you to that person for life. And I'm glad that Tick finally accepted that, which allowed him to reconnect with Jiha, which then allowed her to save, kind of save the day at the end. So there's so many, special things about this series. Like I could spend a whole week just talking about all the little nuances, but yeah, I thought it was special that they, made Jiha kind of come back in that capacity. What else? What else stood out to you?
Well, quick. Atticus did have his eyes almost taken out of his head, and I don't know if I forgive a lady who did that to my body. I'm just saying. So I understand. I'm going to say that 2 seconds. That's it. But anyway,
for the greater good, why not? And I think, Atticus loved Jiha. Like, and then you can't escape love, right? If you really feel it, you can hide from it. You can like fake pretend, but I think at the end of the day, they had a connection, and that connection is what helped. And also keep in mind, and I forget what episode this was, but it was the Meet Me in Daegu episode, when we saw when Jiha had that vision of Tick strapped to whatever contraption that was, only for that to come to fruition. So even if they didn't want to be bonded, they were bonded.
Gotta happen. Yeah.
Right. She saw his death, so it was, it is what it is. What else is interesting? Right. So the whole ancestral plane situation, that is so deep to me. Like, I need to spend some time, trying to figure that out, because that's connected to Hannah taking her own life, which is what created that space for them to even connect with the ancestors. And for Titus to kind of come into the picture and hate on Hannah for having mad, powers, I thought was hysterical. But I do like that they made him say that, right? Because it's like this one last attempt for this white man to hate on this black woman for having powers, and then he dies. So I thought that was dope. That they brought him back just to kill him.
He dropped 2 M-bombs, by the way. I was like, damn. Oh,
yeah, right. That pissed me off. I think I did a little dance in my seat when Tick just pulled out all his organs. It was time. It's been time for him to go. So, yeah. What else was interesting? Diana. One thing I do want to ask Misha Green at some point is, why did they make? First of all, why didn't they heal? Why the decision to not heal her left arm, right? And then 2, and I think I'm answering my own question as I'm talking.
I was like, well, you're about to answer right now.
Oh my God. She comes back with this robotic arm thanks to her mama, Hippolyta, right? And then she crushes Christina's neck. My question was, why was Dee the person to do that, to have that last scene? I thought was interesting. Of all people, Dee.
Yeah, that one really hit me in a different way.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if they're looking to start a whole new series with Dee and maybe the future. Maybe they'll go, with her mom, Hippolyta, because she can go in the future and she knows everything now. Or, is she just tired of it? Like, the new black woman is like, I ain't putting up with no BS anymore. We're done. This is me. I'm gonna use whatever strengths I have and show you that I'm a force to be reckoned with. So it was a very powerful moment. It rubbed me the wrong way because she was still a child. And so it's kind of like seeing, I compare it to like Star Wars, seeing young Anakin, right? It's like, oh my God, it was like, you're going to become Darth Vader at some day. It was like, is she going to become evil or is she still going to do right? And so, because she's gone through a lot, and her relationship with her mother, losing her father, just trying to understand everything. And technically Atticus is her brother now, right?
Yeah.
So you just lost your brother too.
Oh, wow.
So all these things at once, and trying to just process that, but almost getting eaten alive in the car.
Right.
And then you have a sidekick. You have a Shogoth as your own sidekick now.
That was such a dope scene to me.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, now this, right. And that was because of Tick. Like, Tick transferred the Shogoth's allegiance to this little black girl. And I guess that makes sense, right? Because she was the most ignored character in this entire series. So yes, I think that was a good look. And I can see a spinoff with Hippolyta and Dee, like a black mother-daughter superhero duo. I've never seen that. Like, I would love to see that. Like,
that's right. I mean, not like actual superheroes, but yes, exactly. Positive.
But, right. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's some new imagery we have never been privy to. So that would be kind of dope.
I would love to give a shout out though. 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah.
So there's a scene with the comic book, and Hippolyta is like, "Hey, I went to the future," and Afua Richardson is actually the artist, and they give a shout out. She taught me how to draw. That is actually the person who drew the comic books.
Oh, nice.
So I looked her up. Oh my God, she's amazing, talented, from Atlanta. So shout out to Afua Richardson for her amazing, beautiful artwork. So that was just a beautiful scene in its own.
Shout out to you, Afua. Yeah, that is some pretty dope artwork. What else kind of stood out to me? The whole Black love energy between Letty and Tick as they, were kind of going towards the inevitable. That scene in the elevator when they were just kind of standing there and the water was coming from the bottom and they held hands, like they knew things were going to be different. But then you kind of heard Letty, give him the speech, like encouragement and love. That was such a beautiful moment. And I want to say that's the first time that that Tick has kind of been gentle with Letty in that way, right? Like we haven't really seen him be ultra vulnerable. But I think knowing that he's about to die changes a man. And so I'm glad that we got that resolve to kind of see them solidify their love even further than what it was. And then the scene, of course, when he's strapped and Letty comes running and she kind of mouths, "I love you." That was just heartbreaking to watch. And then also Montrose realizing that his son is dead. I think that's the first, outward emotion Montrose has shown towards his son that is, I don't want to say meaningful, but is heartbreaking. And it's a genuine emotion, and it's a healthy emotion, rather. Healthy, that's the word I was looking for. What did you, how did you feel about that scene with Montrose and Tick? Again, as a Black man, and that's a father, and I'm always curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Not funny, but my father had a stroke, right? And so men in general, but Black men, all of a sudden my phone started ringing off the hook and reaching out as family, because when you almost die, you like, oh, okay, let me resolve some things as well. That's the word of the day. That's the drink for the day. So if anybody's playing a drinking game, watching a show, resolve. So and so I was like, oh, this is weird. Now we're talking now. And then my aunt told me, it was like, yeah, he almost died. I was like, wow. I was like, okay. And so, realizing that, also though, when Black men have been gunned down or shot or been, either by each other or the police, or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, that's when you really see Black men vulnerable and expressing the grief for their son and their child, and their children that they never probably expressed when they were with them. And so I saw that as a deep moment of just being vulnerable and understanding, hey, man, I loved you. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to express it.
Yeah.
But also how to express it that I felt if I did express it, you were weak. And I think that's again, we talked about this earlier in the earlier episodes, that, Black folks, the way we communicate to the younger people is just like, just do it. Don't ask me any questions. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. And that lack of understanding why this is happening, it messes with you, man. you gotta really process it. And so I think this show is also therapeutic, because you might see some of the characteristics, in your family that are actually in this show that represent a little bit of everybody. You're like, oh wow, that reminds you of Uncle blah blah. That reminds me of Mom. And so that's why they're like that. And sometimes we don't see it because we're amongst them for so long and for forever, that we just don't really take the time to like take a step back and see for who they really are and who they're trying to be. And this show, the episode before, in terms of when they went back in time and you got to see the younger version of Montrose and see how he became from his dad, how that influenced him. And then now it comes to true fruition and seeing like, oh, how that affected him. But now he loves his son, and all that love and admiration that he had for his son, he just never said it.
And now he gets to kind of be that for his grandson, right? So he gets this second chance. So that I love that they kind of drop that in there for our sake, for Tick's sake, and also for Montrose's sake, to just redeem himself as a father. I think overall this series has challenged and shifted what I think and feel about so many different things, right? The power of bloodlines, right? Like we really don't think about that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the importance of the bloodline and just kind of transferring energy and love and just all of these good ingredients that are desperately needed to transfer versus, you know, the negative stuff. I mean,
yeah,
you know, they kind of go hand in hand, but there's power in that. History, right? Sacrifice. This entire series was about the sacrifice somebody made at some point in life. And that's something we don't think about a lot, right? We just think about our little sacrifices that we're making now. But my great, 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 great grandmother, you know, made a lot of sacrifices for me to be here. And there's power in that. And I feel like that's not really respected as it should be. Communication, the danger of keeping secrets and how they affect bloodlines and, you know, family and friends and joining forces, how important that is. My God, healing. Like you said, the show is one big therapy session. And I spoke about this earlier, trauma bonding. Like we think about trauma bonding, but we really don't have a fundamental understanding about trauma bonding. For the first time, this show has kind of painted a different picture of that for me, and the use of magic to bond people together. And what's really special to me about this series is that, you know, they didn't use magic in a hocus pocus trivial way. Like it was used to seal family bonds. It was used to heal people. It was used to kind of preserve the future. Like in Black storytelling, you know, we don't see it told in this way. So I feel like this show has forever changed my mind and a lot of things, and I love that. I love that. What has this meant to you? You've kind of spoken about it here and there throughout our conversation tonight, but speak on it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on so many positive points. But going back to the family bond, you know, I think when Letty cast a spell on Christina that you know, can't use magic anymore, but no white person can use magic anymore. And I thought about the bigger picture of wealth. Imagine if only Black people had wealth, and we're still tribal, right? So the Native Americans were very tribal and, I mean, family oriented in terms of we still cared about others. You see so many times their ancestors made a spell, right? But made a spell where she could have just banished all white people. No, it was like, we still want to live amongst you, but I just want you to stop having the power. And so in real life, the power in my mind is having income, having equity,
Yeah.
you know? And so by saying you have no more power anymore, you have no more equity. And imagine us with equity and what we could do, and especially when we care about each other and about people, about the growth of nature and family and stability and all that stuff. So it was a very positive imagery for me. Again, that Black Panther moment for me, Wakanda, like seeing Tulsa, Oklahoma before it was destroyed, like all those things, because you saw what we could do.
Yeah.
And so my question now is, are we so destroyed that we can't get back to that? Because we have people that look like you and me that are in these power positions, but there's still, that community isn't there anymore. And so I wonder if that's something, not to be segregated at all, but I wonder if there's an energy that we can get back again, where we're doing everything, where we still know, hey, there's all sorts of life that are going on in this world, but start looking out for each other, having positive energy towards each other, and making sure, you know, we understand where we came from and why this is important.
I think it's possible. I'm, you know, leaning towards the optimistic side, and I think it's possible. I think our mindset just needs to shift a little bit. It can't just be about us. It's not just about self. It's about the community, right? It's about the entire Black community and actually coming together to work together, and not just being focused on me and me building generational wealth, or me having equity. Like, how do we create these things for each other, not just ourselves? So I do think it's possible, and to some degree, it's happening in some pockets. But there's going to be a lot more, there has to be a lot more change in how we think and how we process and how we see ourselves in the scheme of things. I want to give a quick shout out to the costumes throughout.
Oh, yeah.
The dresses, the suits, the set itself, the cars.
CGI was great. Wasn't that cheesy CGI? No, seriously. No. When she turned back and D turned back, I was like, "Ow! Right. What's up with her arm? What's up with her arm?"
CGI is the ish, but just the creative kind of energy it takes to make all those things come to life in a way that I'm just like, oh wow, okay, that's so real. I can see all of that. That's so real in my mind. Like if they somehow ended up in my living room and I'm watching Lovecraft and Tick just shows up, I'm like, yeah, I believe that because Lovecraft is just that dope. That's what it does. So I mean, all in all, it's been a real honor to talk about this show with you for the past couple of weeks. I feel like we've gotten to know each other through this review, which has been in a really, a real organic way. And so I appreciate that as well, among other things.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure. You've been a joy. This has been an amazing ride. The opportunity to talk to you about things and realize things that I may have not known was going on, in the world, and that kind of wake up. Right. So now I watch Tyler Perry movies every night before I go to bed. Just trying to get my black card for the barbecue time. Just trying to get my stuff back. That's it. Caught up with Power 2, everybody. Yeah, so we good. Full circle. We good.
Okay. And it's not like we're not coming back next week. We are, but just probably reviewing something else at some point. But I'm a little sad that we're not going to be talking about Lovecraft anymore. But it is what it is, and I feel like we should give a toast. We should raise.
Oh, all right. Let me see what I got over here.
Raise our respectful glasses to Lovecraft, to a phenomenal show, phenomenal writing, directing, casting, editing, just every little thing that went into making this show what it is. Thank you for that.
I wish I had a horn. We're gonna get that. We'll get that soon. And a toast to the beautiful Ellen. Thank you so much. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. Ditto.
And the production of Black Film. Hello. Beautiful.
So blackfilm.com for even, providing us with this platform to share, our thoughts and our feelings about all things Black entertainment. This is such an awesome space, much needed. And I'm looking forward to doing it every week with new content. So with that, we'll be back next week, 8:00 Thursdays, new content, new show. Any last words, homie?
Gentlemen, watch out. She might kill you.
Okay, yeah, that's possible. I mean, but you remember what that line was verbatim? Are you ready to die? Are you ready to die to F me?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, maybe you. Ooh. So here's the thing: Halloween night or that weekend, you can definitely just say that verbatim. 100%. That's probably the one only night you can actually say. And everyone's like, okay, all right. But you got to change that word on another night.
I could have a shirt made, though. I could actually have a Halloween shirt made.
You got a week. Are we doing costumes next week? Are we doing costumes?
Yeah, I don't know about a costume, but I might wear a shirt that's Halloween themed. I don't know about a full costume. Don't nobody got time for all of that.
Okay, we'll see.
Except you. Do you?
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, my friend.
You too.
Bye everybody.